Hello. Hi, everyone. Excited to be here. Thanks for coming and checking this out. I am Demetre, and this is Lindsey. I'm the Executive Director of Product for Advertising at the New York Times.
I'm Lindsey Liang. I'm the lead product designer at New York Times and working together with Demetre on New York Times advertising experiences. I've been at the Times for 2.5 years and been in the digital space for 8 years.
You want this?
Yes.
Okay. Great. The New York Times, it is an institution. It's been around for a considerable amount of years, and I lost my notes, which was not helping. Sorry, 1 second.
1 second. Okay.
All right, I'm going to use this. Give me 1 second.
Do you want to refresh?
Okay, here we go. Does everyone see anything on there?
Okay.
There we go. Okay. So now we're going to go back to this because this is not working. Sorry. Does that work? It doesn't go backwards. There it goes. Okay. 172 years as it is. 1851, and it's one of the most storied and recognized brands probably in the world. Every time you see a movie trailer, it's always New York Times recommended or a book in your bookstore. But one of the things that we're really known for is our design excellence and kind of our commitment to the journalism and our integrity. From there, the newspaper, it evolved in 1997. We went online on desktop, started using color out of the black and white, bringing things to life, and then eventually, around 2008, we launched the app, the mobile app. We have around 10 million subscribers across digital and print, making it the most subscribed to digital media organization in the world. Beyond the news, the Times expanded into many other places. So many of you may know us for cooking, where to find recipes. I highly recommend it. A lot of other entities from The Athletic for sports. People may have played Wordle once or twice here. And we've gotten kind of wellness and culture. But in the last year, people played the games over 8 billion times on the New York Times. So before we get started, I had a few interesting things I wanted to share. Bill Gates, I don't know if anyone knows, is a huge Wordle player. And one of the things I learned recently, after looking at 500 million plays of the game, it turns out adieu is maybe the worst word to use. And so that's his word, so I don't start with that anymore.
And the second fun fact was back in the 1967, the New York Times dropped the period from the New York Times nameplate. And at that time, that was seen as a violation of grammatical rules, and that was greatly criticized. And however, as that turned out, the dropping off the period saved ink and money. So the production manager came up with a calculation that getting rid of the period saved about $700 per year. And so since then, that was it. The period's not there anymore.
So Adolph Ochs, who was the founder of the Times, in 1896, he declared that all the news that's fit to print is what was the slogan for the New York Times. And at the time, there was a number of different other publications and newspapers, and they had started putting advertising into their newspapers. But for him, he didn't see advertising, and especially the ones that were kind of trying to pull the wool over people's eyes or were dishonest or in poor taste. He said, I'm not going to do that. So he took and reduced the price of the Times from 3 cents to 1 cent. And that ended up making him a whole lot more subscribers. And so the news that fit to print ended up being the slogan for a long time after that. But he didn't make any trade-offs. And the most important thing is that the news was always first and foremost to him.
And one of the things we all joining New York Times is really love the mission of the organization to seek the truth and help people understand the world. And we all really rooted in the belief. We believe that journalism has the power to make everyone's readers' life richer and more fulfilling and great for society too.
So Lindsey and I work in the advertising side at the Times. All this will make sense as we continue here. But as we've evolved as a company, advertising has evolved along with it. So today, both our advertising business models and our subscription work in harmony together. So it's not just about subscribers. It's kind of the way that we kind of look at this together, and that's the way we kind of approach the product design.
So we're delivering our subscription content and the experiences are worth paying for, and so that also provide advertisers a great foundation, very compelling content, and for them to join your times and connect, making that meaningful connection with the audience. But the process of getting there is not always easy.
All right. Well, first I want to give you a little bit of sense of how the team is structured. At the Times, we're kind of made up of many different teams. Sorry, I am out of sync here. We run in functions, and let's see, that's out of order. But anyways, we essentially have all of our news and consumer products sit below advertising, so that kind of provides a unique opportunity for us to kind of understand what's coming down the pipeline, and the way that we kind of look at approaching the problems we're trying to solve is looking about it more holistically. So within the advertising mission, our team works alongside a bunch of other smaller teams, from research, insights, engineers, all the T-brand, which does all the creative for our sort of direct advertising, project managers, et cetera, and data science. And as well as being responsible for all the advertising experiences, we support all of the sort of pitches and partnerships, and we support the teams that run all of the data and pipelines for all of the sales and marketing teams. Given the range of the work we do, that naturally leads us to a lot of friction and sort of the center of tension between a lot of these groups. So today we're going to go to talk about the process we approach design while balancing sort of the goals and needs of these different groups.
And first, let's start with our mind. So for many teams, expanding the responsibility beyond the individual level to team level may be enough to move the project forward. And given the nature of our team structure and across all functions, and we're responsible of developing app products for the entire New York Times bundle, having that team-oriented approach along is not enough for us to really move the project smoothly along the way. So this is because our sometimes within the teams, the goals conflict to each other. And I will give you an example. For our advertiser team, our goal is to create premium ad experiences. And you may ask, what does premium mean? So we have some pillars, and the premium ads should have scale, delivering that impactful results for advertisers, and should be differentiated, provided that unique and recognizable offerings, and should be performant and measurable. At New York Times, we have proprietary measurement and first-party data targeting capabilities that really help advertisers to connect with the right audience. And premium ads should be able to share across the New York Times product bundle. And we strive to build an ad experience that are very respectful of user experiences. And we also prioritize and care a lot about user privacy. And let's look at one of our partner teams, cooking. This is New York Times cooking team. Their goal is to make cooking the go-to tool for recipe exploration and cooking. Key metrics to measure the success here include subscription growth, user engagement, and retention rate. Now, oftentimes we'll find at scale and user engagement odds, like goals are at odds. And as you dive deeper, because to achieve a greater scale, ad scale and impact, the ad would be benefit a lot from larger size, higher placement, and increased frequency. However, these qualities may negatively impact user engagement on cooking sites, like such as how far users scroll down, like how often they click on the recipes, because ads may just be too big or too often there to block their experience. And when this happens, broadening our perspective to a time-centric and mission-driven approach is essential. Like regardless of team goals differences, we're all there and want to have the desire for the Times to succeed. A time-centric mindset is this growth in like cycle of growth, as our CEO Meredith put in words, our investment in our journalism and our app products improve the Times on the whole. Increasing our appeal and growing our subscriber base is this virtuous, beautiful cycle. By embracing this Times mindset, the shift within all teams start to happen. We began to value and really seek to understand partners' goals, especially those are in conflict with ours, because those points of differences are the opportunity to provide that insight on how to make a unique solutions and also very ownable to the Times experience. Reaching alignment within that time, with that mindset, is not a binary win or lose anymore, but to finding those unique nuances that benefit everyone. And, oh, we're missing our order is wrong. Oh, okay. So here's how the shared goals will look like as team and cooking team. So to have a very we have a respect the size of the ad format in relationship to the content design itself. That means like the ads of the height will be, in this example, is similar to the recipe cards. So like to create that continuous user experience. And from other placements, if the content is too copy heavy, we may use a large, beautiful ads to break that reading fatigue. And can we go to the next? Another shared goals we align on is tailoring the experience based on the mode and intent of the user. This is supposed to move, but it's not moving. If you go back to the previous slides, this is a cooking recipe detail page. If you are all using cooking app, you'll notice there's no ads in between ingredients and steps. That's very intentional because in this mode, users are deeply like reading and finding that valuable content. So we do not want ad to interrupt their flow there. And but for very unique opportunities during key moments, we built a very flexible system. I don't know why our all beautiful gifts are not working. You will see, so while you're, you imagine a very like big, beautiful, full-bleed advertiser sponsoring this Thanksgiving moment. And so our ad structure is very flexible, so it can support that big moments to have a higher advertiser presence there. Great.
All of our notes are out of line with things we're seeing, so sorry, it's a little bit disruptive here. So tenants are a big thing for us. Previously to the Times, I was at Amazon, and tenants, as you may know, anyone that has worked in there, is that tenants are kind of the way that we make decisions. They're kind of data and intuitive driven insights that sort of teams and people agree upon that really help people unblock that tension. And when a tenant sort of fails to be true, you can update that tenant and sort of move on and sort of evolve as kind of like the tenant can be your kind of backbone of your product. One of the first tenets from a product design perspective is clarity. And from the product side, what clarity means for us is, people need to easily get around the paper, that things are always clear, to understand the journalism, but also from an advertising perspective, the clarity from our perspective is people understand that the advertising is separate and distinct from the journalism. One of the things we don't ever want to do is get in the way of what people are trying to achieve, but also that the trust is kept intact. The second one is that we think about the time people spend with us. Time for people is very important, and this time that they spend with us is something that we do not want to waste. So we want to make sure that the product design is taking that into account, and things are easy to navigate around. We are putting sort of the things where people intuitively look for them, and we're being very sort of intentional and considerate about all our design decisions. Last one is, uncommonly high standards of craft. These are where we are making very, very specific creative decisions and take our time to kind of think about how that product comes to life. And the accessibility products, we ensure that everyone who's a curious person has the ability to seek the truth and understand the world, and really kind of building an inclusive and approachable product. And last, I think, which is probably the most important one, I think trust. It's paramount above all other things that we look at. Any decision that we make when it might violate trust ultimately is something that we're not going to move forward with, and that we kind of think that journalism and product design work hand in hand. Great journalism delivered in a poor package raises doubts, and the best designed products with hollow content is equally concerning. So the tight integration of form and content ultimately form a product experience that emanates trust.
And the last process we'd like to share today is visual collaboration. So as designers, we often ask ourselves, what kind of unique ability we can bring to the team to move the project forward, to find alignments, what we can contribute there. And today we'd like to share two thoughts. The first is bring the idea to life. The second is making the invisible visible. So the visual things, because we, as a designers, we create tons of visual artifacts. And this visual artifacts really harness the power of picture superiority effect. This you probably hear all versions of this. And this basically means people remember information with image attached to it much better than just text alone. Okay. So that really helps us to, sorry, because my notes is completely gone. I'm kind of blank here. Okay, let me reset myself. So the image we create, and that really help the team to share the information and enhance their memory retention. And as designers, we have many different practices and to guide us or enable us to create those visual artifacts, like creating personas, case studies. You've heard all of this. And we're not doing this for our team, within our team. We're also help with partner teams to visualize their vision. And to visualization of the artifacts can break down very complex ideas into extremely approachable information, because we're not creating super complex code here, and visuals people can react on very quickly, and that helps quickly help the stakeholders and teams to internalize the next step and see the picture better. Yeah, making the invisible visible. It's about so here, because our team's nature, horizontal nature, we work with many different teams, and horizontally, we get a wealth of information and knowledge a lot of other teams do not have. And those information insights enable us to start to see patterns and identify new solutions are not evident to other teams. We'll use cooking as example too. Here, whenever we started a project, thinking about how to monetize a product, the most initial entry points is we want to find the most highly engagement surface. And with cooking, we have sufficiently or efficiently monetized recipe detail page and collection page, but search is the surface remain untapped. And when we started, especially advertisement started this initiative, how we can monetize search thoughtfully. This kind of conversation is going on, intense competing conversation. For ads, our product team may say, let's utilizing existing ad formats and patterns to scale up that monetization fast, and by adding an ad slot and stride on this search landing page. But cooking will disagree, saying, okay, this doesn't add any values to our users, and when they search, and also really cross the space. So our team brought into the project and start to address cooking teams' UX concerns and also trying to find alignment along stakeholders. Beyond just talking to cooking team, our app product team, the immediate stakeholders, we also talk to many other relevant teams are not directly tied to the project. And within there, we start to find pattern, which this page is not. Oh yeah, the pattern here is overall for cooking search, we want to build using existing app patterns to build up the skill. And however, we also want to build new product and to catch the market. And we want to be respectful of user experience, but still build an integrated ad experience. So those are the common things different teams are talking about. So here's a solution our team, and design team came up with. So we will have a sponsored, advertisers can sponsor cooking recipe collection. And this will be represented as a sponsored tag on the cooking search landing surface. And this tag is very similar to how they present their own content. So it's super integrated, feels seamless on the surface, but still have the call out, this is advertisement, be very clear to our users, not confusing them. So user, after they tap on the sponsored tag, they will go to the sponsored recipe landing page with high advertiser visibility, and then they go into a recipe detail page where we'll have interactive recipe cards. If you go to the next page. To be shared around across the bundles and to help up to build the skill by using single ad unit in that way.
Great. So the last project we want to kind of talk through is kind of bringing all this together. So one of the highest traffic pages across the Times is Wordle, and it's probably no surprise that we were tasked with the challenge of finding a way to monetize the game. In early 2023, when we started working together, we took this project on as maybe one of the first projects that we had, and we were faced with our first challenge. For the advertising team, they wanted a deeply, okay, sorry, everything is out of order. All right, Wordle is a cultural phenomenon, as many of you probably know. We have millions of daily players. And then, it's played over 2 billion times a year, so it gets a lot of traffic, and Wordle was actually the most searched for word in Google in 2022. But the challenge for us was, how can we monetize Wordle and thoughtfully without negatively impacting any player engagement? And so, similar to how Lindsey was walking us through the dilemmas between cooking and advertising, in this example here, we want advertisers who have a deep integration within the Wordle game. If advertising could have anything they wanted, it would be a full wallpaper of all advertisers. And on the other side, games wants no advertising. They want to really minimize the impact of advertising in the game and really sort of keep the user experience and the gameplay really true. So, we kind of take the time-centric mindset and the tenets, and then we kind of take those visual alignments and kind of move forward with that, and we kind of think about this within the time-centric mindset. This was your slide.
Yeah, so with the time-centric mindset, we just anchoring games team and ads team. We're in this together. We're building for growth, and players' experience, of course, is the prioritization here. But we want to build a very thoughtful experience, ad experience there. So with that mindset, we start to listen to each other, what we do not agree on. And use tenants, we align on the shared version what a successful ad experience in Wordle should be. So it should be clear and easily understandable by players, should be respectful players' time and game flow, and should be supportive of high quality ad content, and should be accessible to all players no matter their level of their familiarity with the game, and it should be trustworthy and not deceptive, so people know exactly they're looking at ads. Here is we're trying to find patterns. We really go up and beyond and talking to all type of different teams, ads, ads, games, marketing, sales, even data team has their own opinion because cooking is a very vital surface, and we really rely on them to give us the metrics, how people engage with the service after we implementing the ads. So we start to see patterns in people want prominent ad space, they want like scalable opportunities, people want videos in there, and definitely preserve current gameplays, and really they want to see the impact of ads here because it's the biggest service on the times, and the marketing, of course, they want something new and big. Another discovered opportunity during the process is during that time, this hasn't been fully realized yet, but we learned from games design team. This is the vision for your time, all puzzle games to all start with a welcome screen, then go to the game board. And with this discovery, we think it will be the most reasonable to add one advertisement, very dedicated space for advertisement, not touching any game board, welcome screen, but build this ad space in the user flow. So when people click and play, they see ads, very big button, they can skip the ads quickly and go into the gameplay.
And I think it's worth kind of calling out here, the Times in general is generally kind of a very highly scrolled app and website. And so the games kind of serves as a unique opportunity for us. A lot of times video is not something that you're going to find on the Times just simply because people are kind of reading articles and swiping and scrolling through, as opposed to like a TikTok type experience. And so this kind of provided a unique opportunity for us to actually go after advertisers that would want to start to use video content on the Times. So the shared goals that we kind of came to for this ultimately were kind of like, let's really respect the player gameplay while delivering a high quality ad experience, and then ultimately kind of creating a sustainable ad experience that can scale across all the games that have those welcome screens. The success of this was very, very good for us. At the end of the day, the initial experiment showed no impact on user engagement as it was monitored by the data teams. And Wordle ad experience attracted very large kind of premium advertisers, including DoorDash, Uber Eats, Capital One, et cetera. And then advertisers saw a substantial increase on the metrics that they most valued. So that was a huge win. And then finally, the experience had been successfully expanded since then now to the mini crossword and the popular connections. So at the end of the day, the takeaways here are that we really feel like elevating those really hard to have conversations by anchoring them in kind of your institution's greater purpose. So like as you saw kind of throughout all the examples we shared today, the mission and the sort of tenets are ultimately the things that really ground us and kind of bring us back. And actually, we discover lots of opportunities and ideas that are inspired by just having those really hard conversations and then kind of bringing those back. And ultimately, as designers, we kind of feel like we're the bridge or to the communication gaps that exist between the teams. And so ultimately, bringing those visions to life is the way that we kind of feel like designing for competing goals is the way that we kind of approach the work that we do often. So thank you all, and we are happy to take any questions.
Hi, thank you for that presentation. It was really insightful. Just a quick question around having those difficult conversations across a lot of cross-functional teams. Sometimes that can, have a lot of people just talking at each other, going back and forth, if not, facilitated in like a mindful way. So I was just wondering what kind of exercises or, I don't know, activities or ways to move the conversations in like a healthy way did you guys find most useful? I don't know, workshopping or things like that?
I get, yeah. So a lot of the times, in terms of how we might approach that, I think on the games example, a lot of times teams aren't talking to each other at all. So even just facilitating the initial conversation is a big step forward. Specifically for that example, we started with a number of workshops, but just reaching out to the team, setting it up, putting it on the calendars, and actually going and actually including people of very sort of diverse parts of the team. So it wasn't just product people talking to product people or designers talking to designers. It's really kind of bringing that diverse perspective in from engineers, data, and the leaders of the team, and even kind of ad sales and ad marketing, and bringing those people in a room and actually having them hear each other and their perspectives, I think just kind of at least starts to kind of increase kind of a shared dialogue and understanding of the language that we all start to have. And I think ultimately, like, that was probably the most successful exercise. And then beyond that, we kind of take those learnings and insights, and we kind of, I think specifically on that one, we did like a fig jam and brought everyone together. A lot of the time, it was the first time anyone used that. So we hosted a few of those in a row, and then we'd come back and kind of bring those findings back. And it was just kind of like finding a way to kind of have a constant drumbeat of that conversation. Eventually started getting people talking to each other more often, and those people started having their own meetings together. And so ultimately, it's sort of like I said, I think it's sort of that facilitation of the communication that we can be kind of a bridge connector in that way. But those were the kind of exercises that we mostly did. And then ultimately, when you kind of get leadership reviews, all those people have kind of already heard some of the things that they're going to have to say anyway. So even if there is still someone who's a holdout or someone needs to kind of have an opinion that they think that, that those are the places that we can kind of bring those up.
I think also I find it's quite helpful is to really understand what people do not disagree on and what's the problem. And that's a lot of time during the process, the hardest part to identify. Yeah, and like for workshops, and I think recently we found out maybe some people just fits better smaller group of workshop instead of doing 20 people. So really understanding your team's and individual people's comfort level, and maybe in the bigger place they do not speak up, and like the smaller place is like to encourage more a hard and more intimate conversation. So it's really it's more people like driven approach there. 100%. Yeah.
Hi, I think I'm next. My name is Maddie, and I'm a UX researcher. I kind of have a two-part question. So I do use the New York Times Games app and the New York Times app. I'm curious how the fact that there are, at least as far as I know, 2 apps from the same company, how do you guys maintain a sense of uniformity and brand while also adapting to the individual needs? And on top of that, I've worked at a past company or a past role where, say, my kind of area of focus was service providers like, plumbers, hairstylists. There was another team that was food. And there were things that we came across that were like, this would be great for our thing, but it doesn't necessarily apply to food, so we don't know if we can do it. So how do you guys handle like having that individuality and building out things specifically for one unit, and then justifying that and making sure it's not misaligning with the overall brand?
Great. Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think probably I've been at a few different companies where you kind of inherit different systems that are in place. I think when I started at the Times, there were, I think, 7 or 8 different systems, right? These kind of like find their way into existence based on a team just going and doing something, or we go and buy a company like The Athletic or Wirecutter, and we have to kind of figure out how do they start to like be individual, but how do they be part of that more holistic brand? And so recently we started. The product design team started something we were calling the Times Product Language, or TPL for short, and even that's a challenge of its own, just trying to get adoption and the building of a design system in an organization that's as big as we are and as broad across so many different sort of verticals. It's a challenge, but it's something that I think if you kind of go back to some of the points that we try to call out, it's all an effort of the sort of mission overall. And I think if you kind of believe in that mission and you kind of believe in sort of the level of craft or the things that we're trying to do, ultimately it kind of still allows you to kind of move towards the right decisions. And so even though we may not put something on the roadmap that's going to kind of move the needle on something that's going to align the brands together this year, I think we're trying to do little by little, trying to get there. And I think part of that as well is, each brand uniquely does have its own sort of individuality. So I think with cooking, the way I look at it is kind of like it should feel like part of the family, but mom and dad aren't the same person, and the children and your cousins, but they all sort of share a little unique belief system. There's something that kind of is like a through line through them all. And I think with the New York Times, the brand is such a big part of it that we try to look at it holistically, but ultimately you do want individuality in each of those things. So when I go to cooking, I think at a baseline, it should still have the trust, the clarity, all the things that we kind of feel are true from a mission level, but individuality, I think they can have their own tenets and things that they believe to be true.
Right, and I find it's very practical, and as a designers, I find it starting with like unique solution helps me a lot. And for example, you've seen the tag, a sponsored tag for cooking, so that's very specific. We inspired by the cooking search service. But however, like when you started with the unique ideas, the cool part is people get inspired and more people jump in and they start to push the boundary. They start, can I apply to this, to that, and to that surface? And as a design team, we always think, okay, let's start with, oftentimes that's a lot of pattern is, let's start with something super unique and tailored to the experience. But the second stage is how we can expand it and how we can make it scalable and apply to many, many different surfaces. For I think the consistency, we aware there's a problem also on the time surface is like it's not consistent everywhere. So like Demetre said, like we just have a vision there to share with people. This is what ultimately want to rely on and get people inspired. And I think motivate people, inspire people is the first step, and they want to follow you and make the change.
Hey, thank you for the talk. Question more on how do you perhaps adjust the conversation when the goals aren't just competing on what a piece of the organization wants, but a piece of the organization's compensation is tied to something that is competing to what a different piece of the organization has compensation tied to? How do you approach that conversation when meeting in the middle means both teams have to give up potentially thousands of dollars of compensation a year?
Sure. No, I think that's, a lot of the times that's the exact conversation, right? Like ultimately, I think we can talk about how important the experience is and how, we should be doing the right things. And that's generally where we live, right? We kind of want to do the right thing. And, we're cognizant, like if we're not solving business problems, we're not solving problems at all when you're working for a company like we do, right? And so ultimately, I don't have a job if I'm not trying to solve the business problem. I think it comes down to trade-offs, right? Ultimately, it comes down to what are we willing to do to look at like what's the opportunity here, and sometimes it's going to be a financial-driven decision, but at the end of the day, if there's something that we don't believe is going to be, if it's going to violate one of the tenets or the sort of like the backbone of the mission, then I don't think anyone should be doing it, and it shouldn't be in a fiscal decision whatsoever. And I think that's when I think the integrity of the company sort of comes to the forefront. Like ultimately, that's why I feel passionately about the companies. I feel like we make decisions based on that mission. And at the end of the day, I think sacrificing, it depends on what that might be, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's sort of having those shared goals and understanding together allow those decisions and conversations to be a little bit more fruitful.
All right. We have a question from the chat. The NYT tenets are obviously a part of your daily design work. How are new designers onboarded so they are also using them consistently?
So I will say that the tenets for us from a product design perspective are fairly new. We're rolling those out, but the company's had the mission and values, and what we've done from a product design perspective is modeled our product design tenets after the missions and values of the company. So ultimately, in terms of like onboarding, we go through a pretty comprehensive onboarding for every employee at the Times. It's actually one of the greatest onboardings that I ever had a chance to be part of. I cried in the 1-hour onboarding video. It was very powerful. And so just to see the sort of level of journalism and editorial integrity that the company has. And so, ultimately, I think the onboarding process we have kind of brings people onto that, and then sort of individually, as part of our product design org, as we're starting to roll out the tenants, we're looking for ways to sort of scale and expand those. But yeah, ultimately, it's going to be something that we find a way that's sort of like specific to our organization, and then, like I said, if it levels up to the mission as a whole, that's where we start.
Yeah, as Demetre said, the tenant's pretty new. Even like we're still being onboarding on it. I think one practice is shared widely is just to talk about it and like to use it to see if there is a room to improve, if it really fits our organization. By doing that, like I think that we're going to like onboard more people and to have a better discussion there. I think it's really all about just communication and get people on board.
And I think the other thing is, at least for us, we do a monthly kind of all hands with our product design company, and then also our organization, and then the company itself has a monthly all hands. And ultimately, I think it's sort of like anyone is invited to the product design all hands, and sometimes we will have like a guest speaker come, and so in terms of, we see a lot of product managers attending those, and so it's like all the venues that we create that kind of provide an opportunity for people to actually hear the things that we're talking about. That's kind of another way we start to think about scaling tenants.
Hi. Thank you both so much for sharing your insights. I wanted to ask a little more about the accessible to the curious tenant. Particularly, you described, I guess, tailoring the user's experience based on the mode and the intent of use and delivering advertisement at appropriate moments. I'm curious your design process and testing process for accessibility, and how does receiving advertising factor in when someone's using assistive technology?
Do you want to talk through that?
Yeah.
Screen reader.
Yeah, screen reader. I think at the times we have the privilege, like very, very good privilege, to have a whole team work on accessibilities across all products. So we have expertise to guide us where to improve, and we do interviews with users to learn their view our ads. If it's clear, if it's like confusing them, and I think most commonly the feedback we got them, it's very clear because we have the advertisement label on top and it's accessible, anybody can read it. We have the great background to differentiate ads from editorial content, and user tells us, okay, I see the logo there, I see the CTA, I see the message there, I know exactly this is the ad. So we constantly are checking ourselves and to make sure users know they're looking at and there's a trust in building it.
Yeah, and I think specifically there's an example I can think of where there's an accessibility office hours that we went to, and we were bringing up the fact that some of the text colors weren't meeting the bar for accessibility. And so that was something we were starting the conversation. And then as we further got into the conversation, when we realized that for screen readers, they were ignoring parts of the ad unit. And so, it's kind of through that, like even just being curious in general from our own, perspectives, we kind of unlocked and sort of discovered that there was something that needed to be fixed, and we went and fixed that. And so I think that's just kind of an example of a way we would sort of like approach trying to bring accessibility to the forefront for the curious.
We have one question from the chat. In your examples, it seems like you were able to find a happy middle ground that each department was happy with. How often does that actually happen? And what do you do when two goals conflict enough that one has to be prioritized over the other? How do you determine which is more important?
And how often we find common ground. You saw just one visual solutions finally got approved, but behind the scenes, like there's a ton, like 100 different solutions we propose to the stakeholders. It's just constantly like because once you talk to more people, so you will discover more like insights and how to build your solution better. So it's not easy, but for every project, if there's a launch date and there is a decision needs to make, we're trying to align everybody along the mission or project goals under the mission-driven mindset and attendance to talk to each other, really to find common grounds. And looking through 100 different proposals our design team put in front of you, and let's circle ones, edit a few, and then to align on agreement here.
Yeah, and I think maybe the other thing I would say is, you don't always necessarily get to a perfect alignment or agreement, but ultimately, like I said, it is a bit of a trade-off. I think when we think about working with teams, one of the things that we really tried hard last year to do is just start to create connections with the other teams more frequently, meeting with them, even if we didn't have a project we were working on together, just to get a better understanding of what their problems are, what they're dealing with. So when we do have those conversations with them, we're already kind of in the mindset and sort of empathize with the thing. They're trying to solve something that has nothing to do with what we're trying to solve for, and oftentimes that's a friction of its own. But I think even just being aware and having that just really honest conversation and saying, hey, we know that you're trying to do this and that these are your goals. We have these goals and we're going to try to find a place to meet in the middle. And if we could work on that together, I think we're both going to end up with a better product at the end of the day for the user, and that's ultimately kind of the way that I approach it.
One thing I just want, one last thing I want to add here is I find it's very powerful and efficient, helpful if when you put together a proposal, you anticipate stakeholders' pushback and to actively address their concerns, and so that your proposal already answered a lot of their questions, a lot of their concerns. Tell them how you're going to mitigate this risk, how you're going to achieve this, how you're going to reduce this decline of user engagement, and they will feel more comfortable and more open to talk to you and jump on board, and easier to find alignment there.
Yeah, there's a lot of times that I'd say that we have kind of a lot of back pocket things in the appendix when we're kind of going through presentations. So if someone says, did you think about this? It's kind of, sometimes we like to just include those so that we can have that conversation in the moment and then continue with whatever our proposed solution might be.
Thank you. One more question from Anna. Could you speak more about user research at the Times and the collaboration of research and design?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, so user research. So we kind of have a primary user research team, and then we kind of have an advertising specific research team. And so ultimately those two are talking to each other, and they feed each other. But in general, there's constant research happening all the time. There is almost weekly share outs, all of the research which are easily accessible, and they get emailed out every week. Researchers are highly engaged with the product teams. They're kind of part of the meetings that we're having, the stakeholder reviews. So in general, research is such a kind of a key part of what we're doing. Ultimately, it's the most authentic way that you can kind of understand your users. And I think the researchers are so great. I've always loved researchers because they're kind of the arbiters of the insights, and so even just having research be such a big part of our process, that's is insanely helpful.
Thanks. Hi. So my question is, with that tension between the kind of ad revenue and the experience, do you kind of track metrics or data within the experience team, and do you have that kind of tracking influence on what other teams are kind of tracking, sort of the ad teams? Can you kind of have an influence on that?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned, so even this design team that I oversee, we are responsible for even the design of the tools that kind of handle a lot of the metrics. Obviously, there's other sort of automated tools and sort of third-party tools that we're using. But yes, we're very aware of the metrics as we want to have access to them. And then as well, we kind of have weekly, sort of health checks on specific things to kind of see where there may be problem areas. As things start to bubble up that don't seem right, we start to identify like hypotheses of like why those might be true, and then start to kind of try to figure out where should we start to mitigate for that, or do we kind of put that into our strategy of like, is this a trend? Is this something that's happening over time, or is this a one-off? So yeah, I'd say in terms of like looking at the dashboard is something that we're all doing all the time, and it's not something that's sort of regulated to just one group or just the leadership. It's part of the whole sort of product organization, and even things that we've done from like a data tooling perspective. For instance, I'd say like we worked on a project recently where we're looking at like audience insights, and we just introduced the launch of that for cooking. And this is like predominantly something that like for sales ultimately at the end of the day, or for people to kind of look at the campaign reporting on how something performed. And I sent that out to the product design team because I said, anyone on cooking team should be seeing this kind of information, and even just knowing like what the ads performing are, or what the insights are for those audiences can just make a difference for how you look at your audience and how you think about designing for them.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. We have another session at 11:45.